Hey, what's up, everybody? Lawler here, your inside source for all things Rocket League. Recently, Rocket League has put out a new map by the name of Basin, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about how you can play it, as well as some of the pros and cons to what is surrounding it, whether it be about how it plays, where you can find it, and some of the frustrations like not being able to use it in training mode. But before we get into that, as always, if you guys enjoy the content, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, all that fun stuff. And if you'd support me directly, easiest way to do so is by the social medias you find in the bottom left row on rotation. You can find those in the description down below, along with links to everything else I'm talking about today. With that said, let's get into the video. Recently, Psyonix put out a post on January 21st saying Rocket Labs limited time mode is back, and with a new arena called Basin. Rocket Labs will be live all weekend until Monday. So you still have about a day and a half to fit this one into your schedule if you can decide to go and play it. Usually the map on Monday will end around like 6 Pacific. So whether that's going to be true or not, I don't know. But that's kind of how it was last time. And there's a couple initial thoughts about this. First thing is with Rocket Labs, I didn't know how they were going to approach it. I didn't know how often or how frequent we were going to see limited time modes in the past. We've seen things where they talk about how there's a rotation of some things, and then it comes for like a week or two, and then it disappears for months, and then we don't see it again. And with them having to keep this, I think, limited time mode populated, it is nice that it has only been a couple week turnaround since they last did the other map that they had on rotation, and then have brought in this one. So it looks from it behind the scenes that the developers have had a process where they've got a couple in their back pocket, in the sense of what we saw in the initial trailer. And if you guys haven't seen my video on that, you can find it probably in the related or somewhere linked up top somewhere possibly. But in that trailer, you do have it showcasing as it goes through a few different maps. The big one that I assume will be up next is a really skinny map that's super long. And I hope that's kind of the focus they take in this map in particular. And I'll talk about the specifics of this map in a bit, but it is more so just angled walls. But there's, to me, a few different ways you can mess with the maps if you want to handle this appropriately. The issue in the past with the maps for Rocket Labs has always been like they went too much. Like Neo Tokyo had ramps and walls that were weird and it was taller, and there was a bunch of different factors. But to me, the big focus, if you're going to adjust these maps and if you want to make an adjustment, you can either focus on the height, the width, and the length, and you can mess with those. And you can do them multiple at a time, one at any given time, however you want to mix it up. And that gives you a lot of different options. And then another one that I didn't really think about, but was the walls themselves. And that actually focuses in on the new map, Basin. You should be seeing gameplay as well as images of it throughout this video to kind of give you guys an idea. But the biggest thing with this is compared to Galleon and having a deck that goes around the back, is all of these are completely curved at a slant. There is no backboard in theory. And the difference too is you can also drive on those, and there's boost on those. And that's one of the biggest things I noticed while playing this map, is that there is a ton of boost to utilize. There's a couple things that come with that as well in regards to implementation and long-term success of a map, but there's going to have to be a lot of balancing depending on how this plays out after they get feedback. And I'm always curious to see what that feedback is going to be based on how many people who played, if they enjoyed it or not, and whatnot. From the time that I played this map, the first things that I noticed, number one, is that it does feel pretty intimate. The map does not feel like it's too small for a 3v3, but I think, again, the general standard size for the map always feels better for 2v2 based upon spacing and stuff. But because of the way the walls bounce and stuff, this one actually feels pretty good with 3v3. In standard Rocket League, when you hit it off the wall and it bounces or rolls up, there's a lot better chance for possession when it comes to how you want to play this. But with the curve, it doesn't work the same way. You try to play it off the corner or off the side wall and bounce it back in, and that's just not a thing. It bounces straight up, and you have to go for an aerial, which then leads to another touch. If you want to go for like something like a ceiling shot, and the way that curvature of the corner at the top works, it's not really the same situation. And it is possible to go for ceiling shots and stuff. It's just setup wise and everything else, it limits that quite a bit. This one is definitely more about passing it infield to a teammate. So you can blast it at one of the corners and it'll bounce straight up. And if you can read that bounce and pass it inside, you give yourself a really good advantage. And primarily, if you recognize that, where if it's going to hit one of these side walls, just jump above, go for the pre-jump, get above it, and you're going to beat, 99% of the players you're going up against. So it is a very interesting take on a new map, and I do kind of like it. There's some pretty cool plays you can make off the back wall with the boosts and stuff there. And then the other thing with the goal, because it is slanted backwards, that goal has actually got a really different size When it comes to area of score, I don't know really how to describe or articulate how I want to say that, but with the goal being slanted backwards, you can have it come straight down in the goal itself, kind of like hoops in that regard, where you can play it off the ceiling and it'll come down and it'll actually go in. And it makes defending it a little bit more difficult and a little bit more weird. They talk about one of the most dangerous shots to have to try to make a save on is when you play it up off that top. Some of the casters call it a waterfall. I personally hate the term. But when it drops straight down above the net and it lands in front of it, is very lethal unless you're already on the backboard. But because the backboard is slanted backwards, that's not as easy to do. And at the same time, it's not going to bounce straight down. But if you have a pass off the ceiling, it's very likely that that goal just may go in. So there is some different strategies, and I think this is what I like most about Rocket Labs and why I've wanted it, is to push the limitations of what Rocket League can become. I want to see boundaries really experimented with in Rocket League and see the innovation and players and teams and everything else at a high level make adjustments and possibly have favorite maps and stuff. Now, I don't think Rocket League is ever going to see these kind of maps make into the Rocket League esports scene. I think they've always stated, like, we want Rocket League as an esport to be traditional as possible. Same map every single time with different aesthetics, just like it is in other sports, where layout and everything is the exact same. You have a level of assumption when it comes to how the map should play and how it feels. But at the same time, it would be really cool to, as an esports analyst, to be like, Rocket League has a map pick ban phase. There's a bunch of different maps. There's certain teams that are really good on maps compared to others. This is the pocket pick that they have, kind of like Counter-Strike teams in like Cobblestone. Things like that would be really cool to see because it adds a different nuance to the meta. That's something that I think Rocket League definitely lacks from, and whether it needs it or not, I don't think so, but it does add another element. You talk about League of Legends and the difference between different champions and abilities and team compositions, as well as jungle changes from season to season. Games like Counter-Strike with map balancing and economic changes for the gun costs and everything else and balancing of the weapons. But Rocket League doesn't have any of that. There is no other variables. It is, because it is a physics-based game, it is up to the player's inherent talent and their ability to manipulate the ball and other players to the best of their abilities. So that is kind of the beauty of Rocket League, but at the same time, it does feel very minimalistic in the approach to the esport itself. As for casuals, I think this is great. It's just a different way to play the game, and it's built into the game for ease of use. I will say there's a couple problems, and the reasons as to why I can assume is there is no training and there is no private match capabilities. I don't know if they're going to make changes to this map. I don't know if they're going to update it in the future, but it's very tough to implement it into the game as like a hard-coded, like, yes, this is the finalized version, if they are going to make those changes. So even though I would like to play it in free play and I'd like to mess around with it, I can't do that. The game files are there. You can pull them from the Steam Workshop page and then edit your game files to make sure it replaces another map, kind of like we do with the custom maps and modded stuff we do with Lethamyr. But inherently, as a player, you can't make a private match with friends and play it. You can't go into training and practice. It's just not a thing you can do. You have to queue the game mode to play it. So that part kind of stinks, but I can also understand the reasoning why it is more difficult to go and do that. Overall, based upon the gameplay, I did have a pretty good time with the map. It is a lot more fun when you can play with people and set things up. When you're playing solo, it's a little bit more awkward. I turn into full monkey mode and go full ball chaser, but overall the map definitely has a different feel. It is very weird when you get possession on the side walls and you talk about and have to think about, well, how do I pass this? Or you go to play it in the corner, and instinctively for me, it's like I'm playing it off the wall. I'm gonna go for a follow-up, I'm gonna do this and that, and all of a sudden the ball bounces a different way, or it hugs to there and it stays in that same area. You can't really punish the same way you would. A lot of the tactics you used to use just don't work the same way. So there's some exciting things about this map and the differences. And this is just the beginning. I talked about the 4 different ways that you can mess with maps specifically, but then you start talking about the unknown elements. What happens if you change the ball? It's a puck. Maybe it's a cube. Maybe it's something else. What happens if you had mutators? Whether it's slow, fast, whatever it may be. Boomer mode on this would probably be insanity. You then start talking about rumble and power-ups, and there's a lot of different variants you can get out of one map. So that kind of stuff comes into play. That's where the private match and the tournament stuff comes into creation. And hopefully in the future, they do have like a Rocket Labs tournament or something. I think that'd be pretty cool. But again, this is just kind of scratching the surface. There is still a lot of things that they can do with the limited time modes, and that's what excites me. I've been pushing for a very long time of the capabilities that Rocket Labs can bring to this game and what it can do to propel Rocket League into the future. based upon how they handle limited time modes with Rocket Labs. Again, there's a lot of excitement from me, and the fact that there was a quick turnaround time. Hopefully another week, 2 weeks time, we get another new map, and they have some in a kind of a backlog of maps that they've been making, like I mentioned at the earlier ends of this video. But hopefully we do start to see that innovation and we start to see more creativity. Maybe the developers get to be set free a little bit and said, hey man, like you want to go make a map, go crazy. Here's your template that you kind of got to stick to, but for the most part, you know, go nuts. And maybe that creative freedom will lead to some really cool ideas, because at the end of the day, that's how Rocket League came about. It was supposed to be like a Twisted Metal team deathmatch kind of car battle mode game, and someone dropped a ball into Arena and Rocket League was born. So who knows what may come from this, but a lot of excitement. And if not, don't worry, we always still got Lethmir making more maps. I think he's working on like Cornhole, even though it's not technically Cornhole because you're supposed to shoot at the opposite. I digress, but either way, Lethmir's still putting out maps, so we'll have to play those as well. But with that said, if you guys enjoyed the content, let me know. Comments down below if you have thoughts, opinions, ideas on the new map Basin. Whether you like it, hate it, what are your thoughts? Is it too hard as a newer player? Do you enjoy it? What's the situation? Because that feedback, I'm sure, is helpful. But with that said, that's going to wrap it up for me today. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.